Good evening to all the viewers of Abhinaya Bharati English channel for Global Theatre. I extend a very warm and hearty welcome to all of you to this evening's talk. As you have been already told, this evening I would like to give a talk on Luigi Pirandello's Six Characters in Search of an Author. Luigi Pirandello is a multifaceted writer. Though he was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1934 for his contribution to drama and theatre, he was a poet, novelist, short story writer, and playwright. He writes about man's duality. He talks of man's dilemma and mixing truth with illusion. His plays reflect the pessimism that characterized the literature of his times. Thomas Bishop, in Encyclopedia Americana, observes, now I quote, Pirandello's great appeal for contemporary critics consisted in his handling of the play within the play technique that tended to intermingle life and theatre. The term Pirandellism came to be applied to his type of fusion of theatrical make-believe and reality. Unquote. Now I would like to give you a brief life sketch of Pirandello before I deal with six characters in search of an author. Luigi Pirandello was born in Sicily in 1867. His father, Stefano Pirandello, was a follower of the great revolutionary Garibaldi. Later, he became the manager and in course of time, owner of one of the sulfur mines at Porto Empedocle. His mother, Caterina, came from a very formal Sicilian family, politically devoted to the independence of Sicily. In 1884, Pirandello's family moved to Palermo. He studied law at the University of Palermo, but soon he realized that his inclination was towards literature. So he shifted to the University of Rome to study literature. In the meantime, he tried his hand at a few plays, short stories, and even poetry. In 1889, he again shifted to the University of Bonn. He obtained his PhD for his thesis, The Phonetic Development of the Agrigento Dialect. Then he moved to Rome in order to pursue a career as a writer. At the age of 27, Pirandello married Antonita Poculano, the daughter of his father's business partner. Their married life was quite happy in the beginning. They had 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. However, a financial crisis hit the family. It led to deterioration of health in Antonita. She became almost insane. This resulted in a painful relationship between wife and husband. The image of a jealous and suffering wife is often found in Pirandello's work, though sometimes she is nothing but a destructive oppression. driving the husband to depression. This you can see in his well known one act play, The Man with the Flower in His Mouth, and to some extent in Six Characters in Search of an Author. The period from 1914 to 1918 had a traumatic effect on Pirandello's life. All of us know that these were the years of the First World War, and as a result, all the countries were hit hard. He was subjected to financial worries, and his wife's health worsened. In fact, it went from bad to worse and still worse. The condition worsened to such an extent that she had to be put in a mental asylum in 1990, where she remained until her death. To worsen the situation, his one son was a prisoner of war in Austria, and the other was ill in Italian army. Now, at this juncture, I would like to draw your attention to one of his most famous short stories entitled The War. The war also deals with the compulsory military recruitment, where the young boys are recruited in the army, and the parents who are forced to send them to army, what mental agony and suffering they go through. That is beautifully reflected in that story. Perhaps Pirandello had his own experience at the back of his mind while writing this story. Pirandello showed his creative talent at a very young age. At 17, he published his first short story. By 1887, his first full-length play, five-act play, and a collection of poetry came out. Within 2 years, another collection of poems came out. Then the novels followed one after the other, which were a huge success. Usually, a writer who excels in one form of writing does not repeat the same success in another form of writing. A successful playwright may not be a very successful novelist. Similarly, a very successful novelist may not pen great plays. A poet who is renowned in the field of poetry may not repeat the same success in writing fiction or writing any other form of literature. What I want to stress here is, though a writer tries his hand at different forms of literature, he may not get the same success in every form of art he tries his hand at. But the fact remains, as far as Pirandello is concerned, his novels were a huge success, his short stories also made a mark, and to say that his plays take place among the greatest plays of the world is also true. So, whatever form he chose to write, he produced great works of art. Pirandello wrote 43 plays. The first play, which enjoyed a notable public success, was As Before, Better Than Before, which came in the year 1920. In a 5-week writing bout, Pirandello wrote 2 plays, Six Characters in Search of an Author and Henry IV, which became quite popular. Again, at this point, I would like to draw your attention to one of the great Kannada plays, Nane Bijjala, written by G.B. Joshi or Jadabharata. Of course, G.B. Joshi acknowledges his indebtedness to Pirandello. As far as G.B. Joshi is concerned, he was greatly influenced by Ionesco, Pirandello, and some other European writers. In Nane Bijjala, he takes the cue from Pirandello's Henry IV. We should not mistake the title for the King Henry IV in history. It is actually a modern youth who thinks that he is Henry IV and plays a double game. That's a different story. Now let's come back to Pirandello and his other plays. 6 characters created an uproar in the educated circles, and it was after this that Pirandello began to assume his true role as a dramatic force in Europe. The publication of Naked in 1923 won him the award Legion Honor in France. In 1924, Pirandello founded an arts theatre company and toured extensively with it, writing and directing all the time. Some of his best known plays are Lazarus, Tonight We Improvise, Cap and Bells, The Pleasures of Honesty, The Rules of the Game, Man, Beast and Virtue, The Giants of Mountains, The Life I Gave You. Pirandello's art contributed greatly in revitalizing the theatre in Italy, which had lapsed into a stagnant kind of melodramatic romanticism. Although the new literary trend was not the sole achievement of one literary figure, Pirandello's works can be described as the major contribution to it. His plays exhibit new trends of thought and ideas which were developing in early part of the 20th century. We all of us know that 20th century also witnessed 2 world wars. The First World War from 1914 to 1990 and the Second World War 1939 to 1945. So the 2 great wars had their effect on the entire mankind. As a result, the mankind suffered a lot and underwent a sea change. Delusion, loss of identity, the reduction of personality to a role, and a society to a collective impersonation. These are the elements of the new kind of theatre. These are abundantly found in Pirandello's plays. In 1934, Pirandello reached the zenith of his success when he was awarded the Nobel Prize. He gave his medal to be melted down for the Italian campaign against Abyssinia. This once again shows his great concern for the country and the cause of his country. In the year 1936, he suffered from attacks of angina pectoris, from which he never recovered, and finally he succumbed to death in the December of the same year, that is 1936. Now, 6 characters in search of an author. This play Six Characters in Search of an Author is Pirandello's best known and most challenging play. It was published and first performed in the year 1921, and it earned for its author the acclaim that he is a playwright of dramatic force in the theatrical world. The play exhibits a magnificent coexistence of a large number of intellectual, philosophical, and literary thought. To quote the words of Frederick May, the play is a miracle of crystallization of all the above mentioned ideas. Now I quote a passage from the play. When a character is born, he acquires at one such an independence, even of his own author, that he can be imagined by everybody, even in many other situations where the author never dreamed of placing him. Now, why I quote this passage is this actually forms the main axis on which the entire play revolves. This speech from the father in the play is the whole basis of the experiment. Now, what is the experiment? Actually, the technique which I described a minute ago, the play within the play, is beautifully illustrated in this drama. In fact, this technique is not a new one. If you go back to William Shakespeare, in Shakespeare also, in one of his great tragedies, there is a play within a play. Hamlet, who has been informed by the ghost of his father that he, the King Hamlet, was murdered when he was resting in a garden. And as he was resting, see, his brother Claudius came and poured a poisonous drink in his ear, as a result of which the king died. Still worse, the queen, Gertrude, was an accomplice to this foul deed. And still worse in the matter, Gertrude married, see, her husband's brother. Now, these are all very gruesome and shocking facts. By and by, Hamlet comes to know all these things, but to ascertain the veracity of the incidents, he asks the team of actors who have come to Denmark to enact this show in front of Claudius, Gertrude, and other courtiers. The play within the play is so disturbing that Claudius gets out of his seat and walks away from the place, which confirms Hamlet that the culprit is none other than his uncle. Now, the play within the play in Hamlet served a very interesting point. But in case of Pirandello, it's altogether different. In this play, the play within the play deals with the eternal problem of reality and illusion, drama and theatre, character and actor, So many issues are brought together, and Pirandello handles these, you may call them intellectual or philosophical or theatrical issues in such a nice and deft manner that the play becomes one of the most significant, important, and great works of art. So, as I said, this speech forms the basis of the play. Now, to give you in brief the story, if at all we can call it a story, is as follows. When the curtain raises, we see an auditorium, and there are few actors and actresses, a group of actors who have assembled there to carry on the rehearsal of a play. Interestingly, the play is Pirandello's play, The Rules of the Game. As usual, in any rehearsal, all the actors do not come at one and the same time. Many of them are late. So, when we see the actors are engaged in their own affairs, somebody is smoking a cigarette, somebody is talking, somebody is complaining that he didn't get the role that he deserved to get, and someone is actually, learning by heart his dialogues, so on and so forth. And at that time, the producer comes on the stage and asks all the actors to come on the stage. They are already late by 10 or 15 minutes. And it always happens when all the actors have come, the heroine hasn't come. I had read somewhere that the strength of a beautiful woman lies in being late or absent. I don't know whether this applies to the play. However, the heroine, the lead role, comes 10 or 50 minutes late, and they are about to start the rehearsal. When the producer asks the prompter to be ready with the script and they are about to start the rehearsal, as they are about to proceed, the security or the watchman comes and informs that 6 characters have come there and they want to meet the producer. And the producer doesn't want to be disturbed or interrupted. But however, these 6 characters insist that they want to see the producer. Now, Pirandello gives a very detailed, minute description of these characters, and he insists that they should have their own separate identity, different from the actors on the stage. Now, here is what Pirandello gave the stage direction. I quote from the play. The characters should not appear as ghosts, but as created realities. Look at the words used by Pirandello. As created realities, timeless, timeless creations of the imagination, and so more real and consistent than the changeable realities of the actors. All the alphabets of actors are in capital. So, in other words, Pirandello insists that a distinction should be clearly made between the actors and the characters. The masks are designed to give the impression of figures constructed by art, each one fixed forever. Similarly, he specifies the mask. Father, remorse for the father, revenge for the stepdaughter, scorn for the son, sorrow for the mother. Her mask should have wax tears in the cameras of the eyes and down the cheeks. Thus, he clearly gives the state direction. Then he describes these characters. The father is about 50. His reddish hair is thinning at the temples, but he is not bald. He has a full mustache that almost covers his young looking mouth, which often opens in an uncertain and empty smile. He is pale with a high forehead. He has blue oval eyes, clear and sharp. He is dressed in light trousers and a dark jacket. His voice is sometimes rich, at other times harsh and loud. The mother appears crushed by an intolerable weight of shame and humiliation. She is wearing a thick black veil and is dressed simply in black. When she raises her veil, she shows her face like wax, but not suffering, with her eyes turned down humbly. The stepdaughter, who is 18 years old, is defiant, even insolent. She is very beautiful, dressed in mourning as well, but with striking elegance. She is scornful of the timid, suffering, dejected air of her younger brother. A grubby little boy of 14 and dressed in black. A little girl, a little sister, a girl of about 4, dressed in white with a black silk. So, these are the 6 characters which suddenly intrude upon the stage where the producer, along with his company of actors, is doing the rehearsal. What do the characters say? The father tells the producer, their author created them but failed to put them in a work of art. So now they are searching for an author to complete the process. This is a very strange offer. In fact, the producer is a little annoyed because the rehearsal is already late and he wants to carry on with his job. This kind of interruption or disturbance, he doesn't like it at all. So he wants to dismiss them. Since they are already rehearsing a play, there is no need for these characters to come and press upon him to listen to their story and present it. Initially skeptical actors gradually become intrigued by their story when they listen to the story narrated by the father and the complications which arise in the family. The story seems to be quite interesting. Now, what is the story? The father tells how he married the mother, with whom he had a son. Because of intellectual incompatibility with her, he did not live a happy married life with her. Sensing his wife's unhappiness, he sent his son to be brought up in the country. When he thought that the mother is not at all happy and this may affect the upbringing of his son, he sent his son to country so that he may grow up as a very nice young man. This father had a secretary. He had a secretary who was very kind and sympathetic to her. This is very interesting. Though there is intellectual incompatibility between the father and mother, the young man, the secretary, is very kind and sympathetic to this woman. There is, see, same wavelength between the two. Whenever the father talks to them, both of them listen to him in such a way that they are carrying on a silent conversation between the two. So, the father asks or allows the secretary to marry this woman. So, he marries her. Secretary, with whom she had 3 further children, the stepdaughter, the boy, and the girl. Even though the secretary and the mother, that is the father's wife, married, the father felt lonely and desolate. He kept on visiting the young girl, often going to her school, waiting for her, etc., etc. This was not at all liked by them. And finally, the family moved to a different place. As a result, see, they were cut off from the father. So when the family moved away, the father lost all contact with his wife and stepchildren. But alas, as ill luck would have it, the secretary died an untimely death. So leaving the mother and the 3 children, the stepdaughter, the boy and the girl, helpless and hopeless. So the family returned. Now there is no bread earner in the family. So in order to run the family, the mother worked as a seamstress for Madame Pace, who also kept a brothel. This Madame Pace had a shop of ready-made clothes, and along with the shop or somewhere deep, she ran a brothel there. And that's how she earned money. The stepdaughter who visited the shop frequently. Now, I don't say that she fell in the trap, but she came under the influence of Madame Pace and she entertained the customers there. One day, the father goes there. The father, who is emotionally starved or sexually starved, you may say, visits Madame Pace's, see, the shop. To everyone's horror, this new client is received by the stepdaughter. So, this is the turning point. The stepdaughter, who is about to entertain this man, the father, suddenly it is revealed that he is none other than her stepfather. The father takes the family back into his home. But this creates lot of tensions among the members of the family, especially with his now adult son. Now, this is the story they have, incomplete story. The producer is sufficiently intrigued to invite the characters into his office to plan the play. So he discusses with the father and how they can enact these incidents on the stage. And finally, they agree to enact that wonderful scene, the scene at Madame Pace's shop. Returning, he set the scene for the focal confrontation at Madame Pace's shop, while father and stepdaughter complain about the inaccuracies. So here start the problems. The father and stepdaughter find faults with the stage. They are inaccurate. And surprisingly, Madame Pace arrives mysteriously, conjured by the scene. But being real, speaks inaudibly. She is not meant for the stage. So, like any other living human being, she speaks, but she is not at all audible. Father and stepdaughter act out the scene. The father and stepdaughter act the scene which took place in Madame Pace's shop. Now, the actors are expected to reproduce it, the same scene. As they are doing it, the father and the stepdaughter, they are highly critical of the performance by the actors. What is the complaint? The actors are not real enough. See, what mental agony, mental strain, trauma they underwent when, see, the truth was revealed to them, that is not clearly and correctly brought out by the actors who are enacting that scene. After another break, the father insists that the characters are more real than the performers because the former enjoy an immutable reality. This is the most important statement made by the father in the play. The characters enjoy immutable reality, whereas the actors who perform those characters, those roles, are, see, subject to so many factors. They now perform a scene in a garden with a fountain, presenting that the actors are unable to capture the essence of the character's truth. The son describes the fatal tragedy, the final tragedy, unsupervised by the mother, who is focused on the son. Little girl drowns in the fountain and her brother shoots himself. The actors discover that he is dead, but no one can distinguish anymore between pretense and reality. Now, this is the crux of the play. Whether the girl actually drowned herself in fountain, whether the boy actually shot himself, so it is difficult. No one can distinguish anymore between pretense and reality. The producer cancels the rehearsal, the actors leave, but the theatre is still haunted by the characters. So the play comes to an end here. As I pointed out in the beginning, the play highlights the technique or trick of the play within the play. What Pirandello tries to convey through this play. Now, different critics have tried to give different interpretations, and the time, the positive time, does not allow me to explain all those things. If at all I get one more chance, I will talk about them elaborately. Now, just to give you an idea, see, like Samuel Beckett's play, Waiting for Godot, this play also created a lot of furore in the audience. In the beginning, they did not like it at all, but in course of time, the play became a huge success. Many of the audience did not understand the play in the beginning at all. They interpreted it differently. Now, what are the different interpretations? Some said it is play within the play. Some said it is an intellectual comedy, a drama of ideas. Some said it is a criticism of the 1920s well-made play. Some others even went to the extent of saying that it is a satire on the naturalistic drama as practiced by Strindberg, Ibsen, etc., etc. The conflict between life and drama is shown. That is one more interpretation. According to one critic, Francis Ferguson, the play, I quote the passage, Pirandello was quite right to think of his characters as being like Dante's Francesca. They two are caught and confined in the timeless moment of realizing their individual nature and destiny, and so imprisoned naturally out of several diverse versions of the modern theatres, which I have mentioned, those of Ibsen, Wagner, and Shaw. So, some critics actually said that the play, which heralded a new kind of drama, is actually a criticism or an attack on the naturalistic play of Ibsen, Wagner, and Shaw. As I said a minute ago, the play has all these things and plus some more also. I would like to talk about them in my next talk. I take this opportunity only to introduce Pirandello and the play to you. What makes six characters a great play and an epoch making play? We shall know about it in my next talk. Thank you and goodbye.